Hello and welcome. Tonight, Inspector General of Police orders deployment of special forces to assist in the rescue of persons kidnapped from Government Science College in Kagara, Niger State. Barely 24 hours after Kagara school abduction, gunmen once again attack communities in Niger State, kill one person and abduct yet to be ascertained number of people. Former chiefs of defense and army staff say armed criminals have infiltrated Nigeria's forests and communities, call for government presence. And millions in U.S. state of Texas asked to boil tap water before consuming as winter storm knocks out power at treatment facilities. Plus, we'll have business, sports, and later on international news from our London studios.
On business news tonight, Federation Accounts Allocation Committee shared 640 billion naira to 3 tiers of government as for January, as revenue generation improves slightly.
And sports news, Novak Djokovic gets past his semi-final.
And from Abuja, Benue state government shuts down college in Makurdi, the state capital, after the outbreak of Guillain-Barré, a rare illness that has left 9 students paralyzed.
As operations get underway for the rescue of those kidnapped by bandits from Government Science College, Kagara, Niger State, the Inspector General of Police is giving assurances that the force is committed to the safe return of all the abductees. In line with this, the police have deployed special forces, including Operation Puff Adder 2, for the task. The police commissioner and the Niger State government say they are optimistic that the deployment of special operations will result in the rescue of the abductees and dislodge the bandits from their hideouts. Our correspondent, Empress Simon, reports.
A day after the Kagara school attack, the whereabouts of 27 students, 5 members of staff and 9 others abducted by persons suspected to be bandits is still unknown. On Wednesday, February 17, 2021, when Governor Abubakar Bello of Niger State visited the school, he promised to push for the release of those abducted. The police authorities are marching forth with action as these men and officers drawn from special units of the force are deployed to Kagara and other communities where bandits have been operating. The State Commissioner of Police says it is time to take the word to the camp of the enemies and ensure they have no space to operate.
What we are now trying to do is to reinforce. That's why we are using this special deployment to assist in ensuring that we rescue the victim. Everything is being properly handled. So we have deployment around that axis, so we know what is happening and we are monitoring.
But while the police is going for the enemies, the state government is also prioritizing the release of students abducted from the Government Science Secondary School and 21 persons previously abducted from a government-owned bus on Sunday along Minazungeri Road released unhurt.
The security forces, they are already working, they are gathering all the information that will lead to their rescue. So we are hoping within short possible time, by special grace of God, the people that were kidnapped will be rescued unarmed.
It is not only the security agents that are saddled with the task of ensuring the safe return of the abducted persons. The State Child's Rights Agency says it supports steps being taken to bring them back.
We're also fully behind the state government and what the governor has said. We intend to also pursue it also at the federal level to ensure that President does not forget this issue based on other issues that keep coming up.
With a special police operation ready to take on the enemies, the question agitating the minds of residents here, particularly families of those abducted in Kagara and on the NSTA bus, is how soon will they regain their freedom? Empress Simon, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, the Niger State government has released the names of the students, teachers and residents abducted yesterday. A list from the State Ministry of Education shows that 27 students were kidnapped alongside 5 staff and 9 members of their families, bringing the total number to 41. 3 of the staff abducted are teachers, while 2 are non-teaching staff. For the list of names, do follow our website, channelstv.com. And barely 24 hours after the Kagara abduction, gunmen have again attacked some communities in Shiroro local government area of the state. Channels Television gathered that a resident was killed in the attack and at least 2 others were injured, while a yet-to-be-ascertained number of persons have been abducted. The co-convener, concerned Shiroro youth, Sani Koki, told Channels Television that the attack took place last night, while the state was still grappling with the shock of the abduction at Kagara. According to him, the gunmen stormed the villages in large numbers and they were heavily armed. Those who sustained injuries are being treated at the Kuta General Hospital. Reactions have continued to trail the abduction of students and staff of Government Science College, Kagara, Niger State, and the latest is coming from a former lawmaker, Senator Sani, who spoke exclusively to Channels Television, calls for a rejigging of the nation's security apparatus, as well as the use of technology to tackle the challenge of banditry, kidnapping, and insurgency in the country.
The biggest challenge has to be technology. I've said it earlier that you can't fight the 21st century crime with the 20th century strategy. Technology has made things so easier. There is no hidden place for anyone. With the use of Google Map, you can see any street, any house, and see people. Why can't we use technology to track down these bandits? They move in 50, 100, 200 in groups. Why can't we use technology to get down these bandits? A question. We are fighting almost like it's an insurgency. I don't know how a fighter aircraft will be more effective than you have a drone. When you are not fighting in another country, you are fighting bandits within your own very country. So it is inexcusable that a country like Niger and Algeria, that are almost 1.5 size of Nigeria or Sudan, can safely secure their border, and we are unable to do that. It is not about recruiting 50 and 100,000 more soldiers, more policemen, and more civil defense cadres, but it is about providing them the tools, the equipment for them to be able to work. Let us go back. How many of these divisional police offices you see with a functioning vehicle? How many of them do you see with a functioning communication gadgets? How many of the policemen now can safely see if there's an attack, they can mobilize their vehicles to move to the center of the attack and do what is right?
That's our senator there, Senator Shehu Sani, who, by the way, also attended a school in that Kagara community, so clearly knows what he's speaking about there. Now, we're going to stay with security now. And the immediate past Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Tukur Buratai, is warning that it will take Nigeria at least 20 years to resolve the security challenges confronting the country. He made the remark when he appeared before the Senate Committee on Foreign Affairs for his screening as a non-career ambassador. Also speaking, the former Chief of Defense Staff, General Gabriel Olonishakin, says there's an urgent need to man and protect Nigeria's forests, which are now hideouts for criminals. Former Chiefs of Naval and Air Force were also screened by the Senate Committee on Foreign Affairs. Our correspondent Linda Akigbe reports.
President Buhari's nomination of the immediate past service chiefs for appointment as non-career ambassadors has raised eyebrows in the public space and even among senators.
It's an indictment on our leadership. That people are coming into this country, they are maiming our people, they are killing our people, they are raping our people, and we are saying they are not Niger. And yet these are the same security people that we are now going to promote to be ambassadors of this country, representing this country. It's an indictment.
Nevertheless, the Senate is going ahead to screen the former service chiefs who arrived at the hearing room at the National Assembly for the exercise. With gunmen on Monday abducting 41 people, including school children from the government science secondary school, Kagara, Niger State, and relentless violent attacks across the country, it's no wonder most of the questions by these committee members to the former service chiefs revolve around security. The former chief of army staff paints an ominous picture of the level of insecurity in the country and how much time it will take to decimate the insurgents.
They have penetrated the communities. They have won the communities to their side. That's why you see small hamlets, 1 or 2 people still, you see them hibernating or keeping Boko Haram in those locations. So it's a complex. So it requires a whole of government approach to deal with this. Development should be progressive. There should be roads everywhere. There should be employment. There should be hospitals, schools, all over. Because this thing cannot end. I predicted sometimes that it may take another 20 years, and that is the truth.
The immediate past chiefs of defense staff and defense intelligence raised an alarm over the danger in the forests across the country and also the poor response to intelligence information.
I said then 3 years ago that our next crisis will be in the forest. We had to protect the forest.
What is happening in the Northeast is not lack of intelligence, but giving intelligence is something. Managing that intelligence is also something. I will give an example. The intelligence for Dapchi, before the incident, before the kidnap of the Dapchi incident, there was an intelligence report that emanated from my agency. I think it was not managed properly, and that incident happened. Because when you give an intelligence, we expect the troops to move headlong and engage them before they get to their target. But that is not what is applicable in the Northeast. And why is this so? Because of the conditions of the roads.
After concluding the screening, the committee is expected to present a report to the Senate. Linda Akibi, Channels Television News.
For many Nigerians, state policing remains the best way to address the challenges of insecurity in the country. And former Deputy Senate President Ike Ekweremadu is asking members of the National Assembly to, as a matter of urgency, pass a legislation for state policing. Senator Ekweremadu made the call at the inauguration of the People's Democratic Party's Committee on Electoral Reforms and Constitution Amendment in Abuja. He also called for the speedy passage of a new Electoral Act ahead of 2023.
Is a member, is here. In the absence of state police, security of lives and property has practically collapsed. I rallied my colleagues and together we sponsored a bill for the creation of state police in the 8th National Assembly. I'm equally sponsoring a bill for the creation of state police in the current Senate. Unfortunately, we did not appear ready yet or see the sense of urgency to stem the tide of insecurity or rebuild our economy through the decentralization or devolution of powers. With the right political will, the amendments to the Constitution to achieve a decentralized police and secure lives and properties can be achieved in 10 days. So we can suspend our rules, meet Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday up to Friday, pass the bill for the decentralization of the police, send them to the state assemblies for their concurrence, return them and pass it in the National Assembly the following week, and the president assents to it, and the governors will start operationalizing it. I further call on our party faithfuls, the media, the civil society, and well-meaning Nigerians to put narrow political, partisan, ethnic, religious, and sectional interests aside and seize the opportunity of the ongoing constitutional amendment exercise to immediately pull our nation back from the brinks.
In part 2, after the break, Nigeria's economy exits recession. Gross domestic product grows by 0.11% year-on-year in the fourth quarter of 2020. That's in a moment. Please join us again. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, coming to you live from Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Inspector General of Police orders deployment of special forces to assist in the rescue of persons kidnapped from Government Science College in Kagara, Niger State. Barely 24 hours after the Kagara school abduction, gunmen once again attack communities in Niger State, kill one person and abduct yet to be ascertained number of people. Former chiefs of defense and army staff say armed criminals have infiltrated Nigeria's forests and communities, call for government presence. And millions in U.S. state of Texas asked to boil tap water before consuming as winter storm knocks out power at treatment facilities. 3 years after students of Government Girls Science Technical College Dapchi in Yobe State were abducted by suspected Boko Haram insurgents, the community is still hopeful that Leah Sharibu, the only student in captivity, would one day be reunited with her family. A visit to Dapchi reveals that both students and their teachers have been moved to a relatively safer school.
Tears, anguish, confusion. These are the memories of Dapchi residents in Yobe State, where over 105 students of Government Girls Science Technical College Dapchi were abducted on February 19, 2018 by suspected Boko Haram insurgents. Some of the students died of suspected trauma, while others were returned by the insurgents, either unharmed or sexually molested. 3 years down the line, the people still believe hope is not lost.
We are not going to give up. We are praying for Almighty Allah, and we are begging the federal government, state government, and local government, and any other organization that is can be able to assist us to see Leah come back to their family.
We are very hopeful, and we are still hopeful because we are people who trust in God, and we believe that God, who is all-powerful, God who is all-knowing, and God who makes impossibility to be possible, can still make it and make the release of Leah Sharibu.
When Channels Television visited Dapchi community, the house of Leah's parents was under lock and key as the family has since moved back to their home state. At the Government Girls Science Technical College Dapchi, classes, hostels and some staff quarters are empty as the students have been relocated to a relatively safer school where some of the girls who are now writing their final examinations asked the federal government to remember their colleague.
I really thank him for his care about us because of the crisis that we are having in Dapchi. So he brought us here for our safety. And we really want the government to care about our sister Leah Sharibu because she's in captivity.
A lot needs to be done in providing security as the spate of school abduction and incessant attacks is already a threat to safety and education in the north.
From security to the economy now, Nigeria's economy has technically come out of recession after contracting by 1.92% last year, and that's according to latest figure releases from the National Bureau of Statistics. The NBS says Nigeria's gross domestic product grew by 0.11% year-on-year in the fourth quarter of 2020, which represents the first positive quarterly growth against the last 3 quarters. A breakdown of the figure shows that the full-year real growth for the country's mainstay, that's the oil sector, was at minus 8.89% and minus 19.76% within the fourth quarter, while the non-oil sector was 1.69% and minus 1.25% in the corresponding period. In sectoral performance, the information and communications sector recorded the highest growth at 12.9% for the year, and 14.70% in quarter 4, followed by agriculture and the construction sector. Meanwhile, the oil sector, which is Nigeria's mainstay, contributed 5.87 and 8.16% to the fourth quarter and the full-year GDP, while the non-oil sector contributed 94.13 and 91.84% accordingly. Now, as expected, there have been a number of reactions to the news. Earlier, I spoke with the CEO of Financial Derivatives Company, Mr. Bismarck Rewane, and I started by asking him if he saw the exit from recession coming so quickly.
Not as quickly. I've always been cautiously optimistic, but quite frankly, I was pleasantly surprised with the news. So what are the facts? The facts are this, that Nigeria grew by 0.11% in Q4 2020, as against the consensus opinion that we would have a -2 or -3% growth. Why did this happen? It happened because of 4 particular reasons. 1, the economic sustainability plan was more successful than we thought it would be initially. 2, there were supplementary budgets announced 2 or 3 times during the year by the Ministry of Finance and National Planning. 3, there was a fiscal stimulus, which actually was more robust than we expected in the first place, including the IMF support and the World Bank support. And 4, the central bank consistent intervention in the Anchor Borrowers Program and other programs. So all of these 4 things put together helped to push the economy out of recession. And what did this mean? It meant that in the second quarter, where we contracted by -6%, we had only 13 activities expanding out of 46. In the third quarter, we had 17 activities expanding. And in the fourth quarter, we had 29 activities expanding. And those activities were actually also job elastic. So it is good for the economy and good for the people.
All right, considering that the pandemic isn't over yet, I mean, it's still on, and even though there are talks of vaccine, etc., how can we sustain this so that we don't find ourselves getting into another recession, some say another lockdown, for instance? Do you think we can sustain this now?
Definitely. You see, the difference between 2016 and now, in 2016, we had 6 consecutive quarters of negative growth. This time we had only 2, and we got out of it very quickly because we dodged the bullet. Secondly, in the fourth quarter in question, 2 things happened, 1 positive and 1 negative. The negative thing that happened was the end SARS protest. And that, if there was no end SARS protest, this growth would have been higher and faster than it was. Then there was the opening of the border, which happened towards the end of the quarter, towards the end of December, so it had limited impact. So all of these things considered, and the fact that oil prices have now come all the way to $65, $66 a barrel, our production is holding steady at about 1.5 million barrels, means that the chances that we will slip back into recession are rather slim. If anything, we are more likely to see a much more sustainable and modest recovery this time around.
You have a forecast for us for the common man when you do this, looking at the food baskets, the staples, and just things that the ordinary man tends to patronize. Will that have any effect? And do you see that flattening out? Looking at the next quarter now.
No, the bad news is that inflation is at 16.4% and food inflation is at 20.57%. Something has to be done to moderate inflation. And the only way to do this is, unfortunately, we need to push up interest rates so that we can increase the propensity to save, reduce the propensity to consume, and at the same time, the federal government borrowing from the central bank has to be converted into long-term securities. And the federal government has already announced that. So the question is that we are making the right decisions. The timing of those decisions and the impact of it is what you are going to feel. So short run, first quarter, second quarter, there will be a sustainable but modest recovery. But that way we can maintain. Everything depends to a large extent on the price of oil. And that's unfortunately, oil got us where we are, oil will get us out eventually.
All right, CEO of Financial Derivatives Company. Always a pleasure to have you with us, Mr. Rewane. Thanks a lot for sharing that with us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, the use of AstraZeneca vaccine to fight COVID-19 in Nigeria has been approved by the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control. The NAFDAC Director General, Professor Mojisola Adeyeye, explains that there are other 3 additional vaccines undergoing assessment.
This is to announce that our first COVID vaccine, AstraZeneca Oxford COVID-19 vaccine, also called Covishield, has just been granted emergency use authorization by NAFDAC. The emergency use listing will allow Nigeria to receive the first batch of the vaccine from COVAX facility within weeks, subject to approval by NAFDAC. The recommendation for emergency use authorization of COVID-19 vaccine from AstraZeneca or through Serum Institute, it is also called Covishield, was based on rigorous scientific considerations as summarized below. One, vaccine quality. We have to ascertain that the vaccine has quality. We also looked at vaccine safety and efficacy. This is extremely important because safety and efficacy are premium to us as regulatory agency, NAFDAC. Our goal is to safeguard the health of our people. NAFDAC received the AstraZeneca Oxford COVID-19 vaccine dossier from Serum Institute of India on February 10, 2021, which was last week.
Let's cross over to Abuja now, and here's Terry Ikumi. Terry.
Hello, Ijoma, and welcome to Abuja. The Benue state government has shut down a popular private school, Vaatia College, in Makurdi, the state capital, following the outbreak of Guillain-Barré, a rare illness that left 9 students paralyzed. It is a disorder in which the body's immune system attacks the nerves with sensations that spread quickly, leading to paralysis. The Commissioner for Health and Human Services, Dr. Joseph Ngber, confirmed this to Channels Television in Makurdi, following speculations that about 180 students were infected. Dr. Ngber allays the fears of likely spread of the disease to other schools.
Overall, we have 9 cases. 4 were discharged and were coming on OPD basis. And so we saw 2 active cases in Madonna Hospital, a private hospital in Benue. And they were more serious than the ones we saw at BSUTH. But they were doing well. We interacted with them. And so after that, we summoned the health stakeholders in health in Benue in conjunction with the proprietors, Minister of Education, and the Emergency Operative Center in the Ministry of Health. They had a meeting thereafter, and samples were taken. And today, because the school is shut down, we are going to look at the school. Again, the Minister of Education and the Minister of Environment will look at the school holistically, vis-a-vis their water supply, their water treatment, the sanitary habit in the school generally, so that we can be able to come up with something. But for now, it has been clear that it's not poliomyelitis, it is Guillain-Barré syndrome.
State governors have promised swift arrest, investigation, and prosecution of crime suspects without regard to ethnicity, religion, or status. The governors made the pledge at the second National Economic Council meeting held at the State House Conference Center in Abuja. The meeting, presided over by Vice President Yemi Osinbajo, deliberated on the security situation in the country and the state of voter access to polling units in Nigeria. About 20 governors were present at the meeting, which held physically for the first time since the COVID-19 pandemic. Our State House correspondent Kayla Megwa reports.
So far, there have been 113 National Economic Council meetings, and this is the second edition for 2021. It is the first time the Council is holding with participants physically present since the COVID-19 pandemic. As the governors and government officials make their way into the meeting, its highlights are made clear. Presentations are made on the pulling of 100 million Nigerians out of poverty in 10 years, the reviewed National Integrated Infrastructure Master Plan, updates on the general security situation in the country and the implementation of community policing, and the state of voter access to polling units in Nigeria. The council goes into a closed-door session, and after hours of deliberations, the governors of Kebbi and Ogun State brief on the resolutions.
Existing polling units numbering 119,000
973 were established in 1996. They are no longer adequate in number, conducive for voters to vote freely, fairly, and safely, especially as we have seen with the coronavirus pandemic complication. Combat voting units, which were now many of us are accustomed to, and voting point settlement to full-fledged polling units.
The ones that we are talking about now are victims of herdsmen and farmer clashes. I believe it's important for us to dimension the losses on both sides and for government to adequately compensate such victims. To draw a line between an accurate representation of the facts and over-sensationalization of the story, particularly when it borders on issues of national security. We need some form of orientation of our people to ensure that we encourage ourselves to be more responsible in reporting of news and to do everything to punish people who propagate fake news.
The disturbing security situation in the country obviously has colored the conversations here at the National Economic Council, with the governors committing to long-term solutions which they believe may affect the 2023 elections. From the State House in Abuja, Kayla Megwa, Channels Television News.
The Bank of Industry has given the assurance that no less than 500,000 workers from vulnerable companies will benefit from its ongoing payroll support program. The bank in the scheme pays between 30,000 to 50,000 naira to 10 workers per company nationwide.
COVID-19, without doubt, has changed the way everything is done since hitting the world like a thunderstorm. So it doesn't take more businesses out of market. The federal government of Nigeria, through the Bank of Industry, is lending a shoulder to lean on through its MSME Survivor Fund.
So far, across the country, we have successfully verified 64,000 businesses, and 311,000 employees have been paid across Nigeria.
This meeting is an engagement between the Bank of Industry and the beneficiaries of the payroll scheme.
We had so many people, so many workers at home. Our workers were home. We had those on maternity leave. There wasn't much of an income coming in to be able to even pay those that were working full time. Talk more of those who were on maternity leave. But when the intervention came, it cut across all staff. Everybody was able to benefit from it.
Before the pandemic era, the school was performing very well, but the pandemic came and it affected everything, academically, physically, financially, and otherwise. So when the intervention came, we heard about it, we got enrolled, we got registered. When it came, it was able to cushion the effects of the pandemic.
The bank is promising to attend to some of the concerns raised, planning to kickstart the second leg of the intervention soon.
A lot of them, they were stuck between the option of sending their employees, firing them, or just keeping them without payment. And that was the time everybody needed money. So those 3 months that were able to provide that sort of cushion before economic activities picked up, and a lot of them are reporting that economic activities have picked up for them, and they are now able to continue paying their staff as before.
The Payroll Support Scheme is one of the 5 programs by the federal government to cushion the effect of COVID-19 on businesses, and it is to the tune of 7.5 billion naira.
The Lagos State government will appear to testify before the state's judicial panel on restitution for victims of SARS. Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Ebun Adigboruwa, disclosed this today in an interview with our judiciary correspondent, Shola Shoyele. Mr. Adigboruwa, who had earlier hinted that he was considering his continued participation on the panel, says that after extensive discussions with the executive, especially on issues of the independence and tenure of the panel, the fears that victims and petitioners may not get justice were allayed. He said that the panel has since met to take decisions on compensation to deserving petitioners. Thousands of homes in the U.S. state of Texas have been without heat and power for a 4th day, and that's despite some progress in restoring power following the winter storm that crippled the electrical grid. Here's Simon Pusey with more international stories in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Australia's Prime Minister Scott Morrison has said his government will not be intimidated by Facebook after the social media platform blocked its news feeds to Australian users.
I think is that we set the rules that are right for our people.
Mr Morrison described the move as arrogant and disappointing. Facebook is responding to a proposed law which would make tech giants pay for news content on their platforms. Australians now cannot access local and global news sites via the site. People outside the country are also unable to read or access any Australian news publications on the platform. Nearly 7 million people in the US state of Texas have been told to boil tap water before consuming it after a deadly winter storm caused power blackouts at treatment facilities. The huge snowstorm, which is still sweeping across the southern US state, has killed at least 21 people and left millions without power. Texas has also seen widespread blackouts and burst water pipes. The state's energy grid has been overwhelmed by a surge in demand as people try to keep warm in some of the coldest temperatures in more than 30 years. Meanwhile, Texas Senator Ted Cruz is under fire after photos emerged on social media of him boarding a flight to Cancun, despite the ongoing crisis in the state. Police in Myanmar have again used water cannon against protesters in the country's capital as daily protests contesting the military government and strikes continue to paralyse the country. Protesters could be seen banging on metal objects as they faced off with police along a city road in the capital, Naypyidaw. Some of the protesters dispersed after being sprayed repeatedly by water cannon. The army took power after the Electoral Commission rejected its accusations of fraud in a November election won by the incumbent leader Aung San Suu Kyi. Police have clashed for a second night with thousands of protesters in Madrid and Barcelona following the arrest of a rapper charged with glorifying terrorism and insulting the royalty in his music. Protests began peacefully with demonstrators clapping and chanting "Freedom for Pablo Hasél" after the musician was detained on Tuesday, but the situation escalated after police charged at the crowds. Some protesters responded by setting containers alight to create barricades in Madrid's narrow streets. Ghana has presented 100,000 units of election thumbprint pads to the Republic of Niger to support its second round of presidential elections, which start this weekend. The former president, Mahamat Usame, has a tough race to run on Sunday when he faces off against the ruling party's candidate, Mohamed Bazoum. Mr. Usame promised to restore security in a country recently hit hard by a series of Islamist attacks by militants linked to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State. Saiko Hashimoto has been appointed as the next president for Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games after her predecessor quit over sexist comments he made. The former Olympics minister is a 7-time Olympian herself, having competed as a cyclist and a speed skater. Former chief Yoshiro Mori resigned following a backlash after he was quoted as saying women talk too much. Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, is said to be in good spirits after he was admitted to hospital on Tuesday evening as a precaution due to feeling unwell. The 99-year-old was taken to King Edward VII Hospital in central London. His stay is not related to coronavirus, and a palace source said the Duke walked into hospital unaided. He's expected to be there for a few days of observation and rest. Future eruptions at Mount Etna could trigger a tsunami in the entire Mediterranean. That's according to scientists after its latest explosive activity. Europe's most active volcano continues to spout ash and lava, shutting down the nearby airport of Catania. The warning comes after experts found that constant movement towards the sea could contribute to a major landslide along Etna's coast. The last major eruption was in 1992. And finally, French bakers are fighting for the traditional baguette to be given UNESCO World Heritage status. It's as producers in the country are increasingly fearful over the quality of bread. A French government decree released in 1993 put in place regulations over the production of traditional baguettes, which should be handmade without any additives and fermented between 15 to 20 hours. The Confederation of French Bakers, who submitted its application to France's Culture Ministry, hope gaining the status will help protect the quality of the traditional baguette. The country's final candidate for the UNESCO title will be chosen in late March. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel Studios in Lagos.
Many thanks, Simon. Nigeria's D Tigers have extended their unbeaten run at the FIBA Afro-Basket qualifiers to 5 games. And the former African champions beat host of the 2021 Afro-Basket Rwanda 64-52 in the second round of matches in Group D. The Rwandans won the first quarter 22-14, but the Nigerian team showed they meant business, clinching the second quarter 16-19. The third and fourth quarter also ended in favor of Nigeria 14-10 and 20-10. And that's wrap on sports news. I'm Ayo Tunde. Followed is back to you, John.
Thanks a lot, Ayo Tunde. And the main news again. The Inspector General of Police today ordered the deployment of special forces to assist in the rescue of persons kidnapped from Government Science College, Kagara, Niger State. That's the news at 10 tonight. Thanks a lot for staying with us. I'm Ijoma Onyato. But just before we go, a national discussion on the state of affairs in the country will be hosted by Radio Now tomorrow at 2 p.m. under its Urgent Conversation series. The speakers include the chairman of the Nigeria Governors Forum and Ekiti State Governor Kayode Fayomi, his Kaduna State counterpart Nasiru El-Rufai, and the Senate Minority Leader Eyinnaya Abaribe. The session will be moderated by renowned journalist and Pulitzer Prize winner Dele Oloyejede, and the time for the conversation once again is 2 p.m. It will be broadcast live on Channels Television. Thanks a lot for watching and have a good night.